AI is changing everything that we do. It's in our healthcare system, it's in our transportation system. Heck, it's changed just about everything we do here in journalism now. And we continue to talk about its implications and the new things that are changing in our communities because of AI, and it's coming so fast. And that's what we'll be talking about today on the Potomac Local News Podcast. Hello and welcome, everyone. I'm founder and publisher of Potomac Local News, Uriah Kiser. This is our podcast. We'll be talking with Dr. Amarda Shehu today from the George Mason University. She is its new Associate Vice President of Research for the Institute for Digital Innovation. And she will be talking about her role and what it means for the university and obviously the broader community here in Northern Virginia. But before we get to that, we want to make sure that you are liking and subscribing to this podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, you know what to do. Click that bell and subscribe to this podcast so you get more local content that we are producing for you here at Potomac Local News. And of course, our free email newsletter at potomac.localnews.com. Now up to more than 17,000 recipients for that email newsletter. Goes out every day about 4 o'clock with all the local news that we produce. And we'd love to do it for you. And we don't charge a dime for that. It's all free. So please subscribe at potomac.localnews.com. So let's get into the interview now. Doctor, thank you for joining us. Now, according to this press release that we received, you were hired back in the fall, so you're just kind of getting into the role here, and it says that you are aiming to maximize opportunities and drive innovation with local, regional, and national and global impact with AI. So that is no small feat there. There's a lot in there. So kind of tell me, this is a new role. Explain it and what it is. Just what it is. What do you do here?
Right. Thank you for having me. So you're right to say that it's a new role. I was hired back. I mean, I never left. I was, as you mentioned first to your viewers, the Associate Vice President for Research for one of the 3 institutes here at Mason, the Institute for Digital Innovation. And then I stepped out of the day-to-day duties of that role to take on a new role that the president, Dr. Gregory Washington, offered me to be the vice president and the first chief AI officer of George Mason University. Now, this role is new for institutes of higher education, right? You can find it in companies. You've heard about chief AI officers in companies or even in some government agencies. But you can count probably in one hand the universities that have started to think about needing someone to fulfill this role, right? What inspired Mason to set up this role? Well, first, it looks a little bit different from what it looks like in industries. In industries, this role is all about figuring out ways to integrate AI in the day-to-day processes, to bring efficiencies to a company, but then also to innovate on products. There's a little bit of that at the university, but we don't really create products. Our products are people, right? We support students, we build them up, we set them for success, we train them, we prepare them to join the workforce. There's research and development that we do. So this role looks a little bit different at a university. But the core of it is to innovate. And so that is really what inspired Mason to establish this new role, but to recognize it as a sort of a university initiative that has sort of its own umbrella. And so to put it under a vice president setting. Now, Mason really prides itself on being an innovative university. And I think part of it is because we're quite young, we haven't been around for hundreds of years. We just celebrated our 50th anniversary. So you could say we're young and hungry to make an impact, right? And to differentiate ourselves. And so one of the ways that we're trying to differentiate ourselves is really to be on the leading edge, to really be innovative, because we don't have that sort of historical background, right? We don't have these deep set colleges and schools. So everything is very much collaborative here. So it makes perfect sense to have this role. We really want to be at the leading edge and lead on this disruptive technology, right? But we want to lead on AI in education, AI in research. We want to lead on how can we advance AI to make an impact for the economy in our communities. And really, we want to be a catalyst for change. So we recognize not only the promise of the technology, but we recognize that these technology is really advanced in institutes of higher education, right? That is what they do. So that is kind of one way of answering the question of what inspired Mason.
I think it is so interesting to have this conversation about artificial intelligence with somebody who is in the education field and higher education, because those who use AI, the majority of them, is probably ChatGPT or some sort of model which, changes text around. Now we're seeing it in video. I mean, obviously, that's just scratching the surface of what AI really does. But when you have the conversation about and someone who doesn't use AI and say, well, wait a minute. I mean, how is that affecting students and how they do their work? And how is it changing, the days we all have to show up and sit in a classroom and read from books. And now, AI can do things for you. So how is that changing the educational environment? And when you look at what type of research that you're doing on this transformative technology, what does that even look like?
Yeah, so first I want to make sure that the listeners here understand something. I'm not old, but it almost seems that when you say AI these days, you just think OpenAI and Google and Microsoft, right? You think big tech. Well, the thing is that artificial intelligence is a domain of computer science. We teach computer science at universities and we carry out computer science research. We have always offered courses on artificial intelligence to our students, primarily our computer science and our engineering students, right? And our faculty keep continuing, that they have been the ones to advance AI research. So some of the fundamentals, the rails, if you will, of the technologies that you now hear come from OpenAI and others, those were developed in universities, right?
And what kind of technologies are they?
Yeah. So one of the technologies that I think most people hear about are these large language models, right? So large just means that they're very big. They have a lot of parameters, a lot of variables for anybody that remembers good old calculus days. And they are called language models, but they're sort of a very specific type of model that learns from data, right? So it learns from text and it learns how to mimic text, basically. And it is a model that it's innovative in the following way. I would say back in the old days, even say a decade ago, when we would train models, we would kind of tell them what to look for. Whereas these models are a little bit different. It's kind of like when you read a textbook and you try to memorize it and you kind of close your eyes and say, okay, so do I remember now the next word? And you open your eyes and you're like, oh, I remembered, yay. And if I don't remember, I penalize and I go back and I sort of retrain myself again. And so you might have heard it as next token generation or next token prediction. That's what these large language models do. And they're kind of the fundamental technology under ChatGPT or Google Gemini, right? Or Amazon Bedrock. Every company kind of has their own names. And if you extend that to other modalities of data, not text, let's say images, then you get DALL-E, right? But they're trained on both images and text because you get to put a text in prompt. You're like, okay, give me the image of a girl that's sitting at a table reading a book and is frustrated by it, something like that. You get an image back, right? So, and more broadly, we consider these foundation models. Foundational in the sense that they kind of train themselves through this process of closing and opening your eyes. I'm anthropomorphizing it, and they go beyond language, right? They're being used in healthcare. They're being used for generating new drugs. They're being used for business decision making. They're being used for a whole lot of things. But the core of these technologies were really developed in universities, right, inside the doors of the universities. It's just that universities, we usually don't have a PR team, right? We're not out there year by year saying, okay, now we launch this model and now we launch that model. So yeah, it's exciting, but we have to rethink a little bit how we educate our students.
And what does that look like? I mean, well, do you anticipate over the next, I mean, it's happening so fast, so I'm going to have to use smaller numbers, next 5 years, next 10 years. I mean, will the educational environment, will kids, I say kids, but college students still drive to campus, park their car, go and sit in a room of 30 other students. Will they be learning the same, I guess, the same methods, the same subject matters? If your focus is on putting this AI, I assume on campus and putting it out there responsibly and focused on that. First of all, what's your challenges on the campus level to make sure that it's implemented well?
Yeah, yeah. So there are universities that are probably not paying attention to what's happening, but Mason is not one of them. We have fully embraced the fact that these technologies are here to stay. Our students are already using them. My kids are using them. They're in middle school and elementary school. What we are trying to do here at Mason is to integrate them responsibly, right? We want to figure out how do we integrate them responsibly while still remaining faithful to our core mission of helping the development of students, right? And helping them to gain the skills that they need to succeed in the workforce. So absolutely, teaching will have to change. And so we're starting that. We have a task force here at Mason, and we're thinking, okay, what does that mean now? If a student also has a student and the instructor have access to all these models, what does teaching in a classroom look like? What should you assess for, right? There are some things that before you would assess for memorization, right? But now you don't have to so much. So now what do you assess for? How do you assess critical thinking, right? While allowing and accepting and perhaps even encouraging that students have access and have the ability to utilize these technologies in order to obtain knowledge more rapidly, right? So we are not closing the door. We're saying, here it is. It's an amazing portal to an amazing amount of human knowledge collected over centuries, millennia, and you kind of, you have your portal to it, but what do you do with that knowledge? Coding has to change the way that we teach coding to our students, because now you can have these technologies that they can generate code for you. So it goes more into the critical thinking. How do you kind of focus the instruction into giving students this higher level of thinking, right? And how do you assess that rather than in the lower, nuts and bolts? But it's an amazing opportunity, because by allowing now instructors to focus on the higher level thinking, you suddenly make it easier for all students to participate. It used to be that if you were to say education in artificial intelligence, you would immediately think just computer science students and engineering students, right? Because you had to know how to program, right? You had to know specific programming languages, you had to take very specific classes. But now, in a sense, these technologies are making it easy to bring students with a variety of disciplines and variety of backgrounds and to still get skills in artificial intelligence. We have an undergraduate minor here at Mason, one of the few, I should say, in the nation by now. It has been operational since fall of 2024, and it is at the intersection of ethics and AI. And it's open to all undergraduates, no matter whether you're a freshman or a senior, or whether you're an engineer or you're going to a humanities or to the Sharp School of Policy and Government. It's open to everybody because it allows students to get these skills at the intersection of ethics and AI. We have similar versions for all graduate students in a certificate in responsible AI. And so we're continuing to innovate here at Mason, thinking about how do we open up? How do we make sure that we give these skills to everyone without forcing everybody to become an engineer? And I think that's what excites me a lot. And that's where there's a lot of opportunity in institutes of higher education like Mason.
You talk about critical thinking, and you talk about being expressive. It seems to me that with the implementation of this technology, students are going to have to explain themselves. They're going to have to learn how to talk to people. They're going to have to relearn how to make those interpersonal connections and be able to not maybe not rely on coding, as you said, or going into a lab somewhere and just locking the door and making something awesome. It seems I know I have interns at our workplace, and we focus a lot on being able to not so much, because AI has changed a lot of the things we do, from writing to video editing to, we teach them how to simply build relationships, simply how to talk to, make connections, go call the mayor, talk with the mayor, and, interview the mayor, as opposed to, sitting down and focusing on, let me try to write the best story. How we obviously want to write the best story, and we still push them to do that. But all the technology has changed, and some of the things that we spent so much time on, especially in journalism and content production, have again, it's mind blowing. And I guess the next logical question here is, you mentioned the economy and the implications it's going to have. Some might think, oh my gosh, the sky is falling. If these computers are going to do, if AI is going to do everything for us, then isn't that going to knock out a bunch of jobs? And on the other hand, I've heard so many people say, no, it's not. It's actually, it's going to be able to let people who have a job be more efficient and actually do more with what they do. So on the economy, how are we supposed to view this?
Yeah, and that's a good question. There's a lot of apprehension, right? Especially with the technology that seems to evolve so fast, right? And I know that there are studies, sort of these longitudinal studies on how new technologies take electricity, for instance, right? That's probably a good comparison, because AI is not sort of one thing. It can be used for a lot of things in the same way that electricity, right, can be used to power a factory, and then you can make new things in that factory. That's the same way with AI, right? You can use it to power an organization, and then that gives you ideas on how to create new products. So it is, in some sense, it's a meta technology, right? Almost a medium of productivity. And I'm not an economist, and I don't study, how technology shifts things in the workplace, but we all know that it does, right? When electricity came, jobs changed, right? And some jobs disappeared, but the majority of the jobs, they simply shifted. So that is what we're trying to do. We're trying to figure out, okay, we need to prepare students to be able to be skilled and versatile and literate in AI, right? If they are expected now that in the workplace they will be able to use AI instead of, the spreadsheet or the calculator, are they prepared to do that? So when students ask me, are you afraid? I say, well, I'm not afraid about me. And actually the question should not be to me. The question should be, are you afraid about your kids, right? Or are you afraid about your loved ones? Because that's when it really becomes substantial. And I can honestly tell people, I'm not afraid about my kids not being able to find jobs and lose to AI. What I am afraid about is my kids not being competitive and losing jobs to other kids that are very skilled in AI. It's a great time. I say it's a great time to be alive, but as in any time where you experience these very rapidly moving technologies, you have to participate, you have to play, right? You cannot go and hide, because you want to be part of the conversation and you want to be part of this new economy and the new workforce and how things are shifting. And it's uncomfortable, right? It's uncomfortable for me. I'm in my 40s. I'd rather be comfortable and just go back to what I know, right? But unfortunately, that's not a luxury that we have. So I also tell all my friends, join the process, right? Play yourself. Don't be afraid. Don't use other people's experiences to determine your actions. Use your own experiences to determine your actions, and just participate. And don't think, oh man, I don't understand anything. Go play with it. You are an expert in something, in some domain, whatever it is. Is it French literature or something? Okay, go play with ChatGPT and test it on French literature. And you find out it's horrible. Write about it so that you instruct the engineers and you tell them you're not there yet, right? These techniques that seem so amazing, they still have shortcomings. So be a part of the conversation in any way you have with the skills that you have, but always be participating.
As someone who is also in their 40s, I think we're seeing something that if you can't beat them, join them. And I think a lot of people are going to have to join them. And as you said, your children are already using this technology in grade school, intermediate school. And so by the time they get to college, by the time they get to university, they've already been exposed to it. And so that's why I think it's great that Mason is taking a proactive approach and just diving in and bringing you in to make sense of all of this. Dr. Shehu, thank you so much for joining us today on the Potomac Local Podcast, and best of luck to you. I mean, this is, as we discussed, it's changing so fast, and there's so many moving parts, and the job description they sent me is very big. So you have a big task ahead of you, and we can't wait to see how you do.